While lawmakers debate what to do with Syrian and Iraqi refugees, 2 Minnesota women are taking matters into their own hands by traveling to the Middle East. The women are working at a safe house in Iraq, helping women and girls of the region who have escaped ISIS captivity. ABC 6 News reporter Megan Stewart has our story.
The women are helping the Yazidi people, a religious minority in the area. The safe house where they are working has a list of more than 500 displaced women and girls hoping to receive the services. Some have committed suicide while waiting in a land where hope is hard to find.
People can do damage to people in this world we live in today. That's a sad reality.
The U.S. is sending special operations forces to Syria to fight the Islamic State.
This is an intensification of a strategy that the president announced more than a year ago.
The announcement was made late last month, before the recent attacks in France and the bombing of a Russian airliner, which combined killed more than 350 people. In addition to special forces, the U.S. has already led more than 8,000 airstrikes on ISIS locations.
The United States has been steadily ramping up over the course of these last months.
I got an email on a Monday night that said, I know this is crazy, but would you be willing to go to Iraq next week?
Natalie Scow is also among those in the Middle East. Scow works in the healthcare field in Rochester, but for now, the licensed counselor has a new job working in a safe house in Iraq with the nonprofit group Crisis Response International.
I didn't know if I was walking to my death or not.
We caught up with Scow before she left earlier this month for her second deployment, if you will. Her first trip was in August.
I can share a couple of the stories. One particular woman and girl, she was a 12-year-old girl. She was in this village. ISIS attacked. They separated all the men and the women, and then they slaughtered all the men in front of the women. And then all the women were taken in as sex slaves.
Scow is working with Yazidi women and girls of the Mount Sinjar region. The area was one of the first targets of the Islamic State in Iraq back in 2014. Airstrikes still shower the Sinjar region.
There have been a few scares here and there.
Leslie Strayer, who lives in Apple Valley, was there when this air assault hit last month. We were able to interview her in Iraq via Skype through a spotty internet connection.
Obviously, there's things going on all around Iraq and Kurdistan. Always, so we're very aware.
At the time of this interview, Strayer was working at the same safe house where Scow is now. Strayer has since returned home to Minnesota, but says she will go back to the safe house because the need is so great.
They tell us that when they're in the refugee camps, they cry all day long.
The Minnesotans tell me the Yazidi women and girls at the safe house escaped from ISIS in Syria, many of them living with STDs after physical and sexual abuse, some having had forced abortions so they could continue to service ISIS men.
I will never forget actually the image of when they first arrived off the bus. They looked like shells of people. There was no life in their eyes. You could just feel the sorrow on them, and that was a defining moment for me because I remember seeing that and thinking, what can we possibly do in 10 days with these women that have been through so much?
Scow and Strayer work with the women and girls to start the healing process. They work on art, an easier way to communicate with a language barrier, and do group therapy.
The Yazidi people definitely take to this type of thing. They're very creative, and they really appreciate learning how to express their feelings.
One of the breakthrough moments was when it was one of the most intense moments where a lot of the girls started crying. A couple ran away, and we were able to just sit with them while they cried. Again, there was a language barrier, so we couldn't talk one-on-one with them, but we just allowed them to start to grieve and realize what they've been through.
Both Scow and Strayer say it's intense work for average Minnesotans, but it's help nonetheless.
As you can imagine, these women are pretty distrustful. They don't know who to talk to. They don't really want to share their story because they're ashamed. But they've seen as some of the women have joined our program, and they leave with so much more hope, and they look like different people. So when they return to the camps, word is kind of spreading.
The women and girls will eventually move through refugee camps across Europe, often landing in Germany, embarking on their long journey to freedom, while the rest of the Western world debates their fate.
So this is a moment for all of us. Let me make that clear.
Megan Stewart, ABC 6 News. Now, as of just a few days ago, the Kurdish people have been able to take back some of the cities in the region from ISIS rule. The group Crisis Response International is working with the Kurdish government to open another safe house for people of the region, something that will take more money and volunteers. Live in the studio, Megan Stewart, ABC 6 News.